What a hot mess. I cannot believe it. Woo! All 540 of you plus radio listeners, are y'all listening to this? I'm what's the word I'm looking for? Combobulated. Lord Jesus. But guess what? I know somebody who's not combobulated, who's not confused this morning. The Honorable Wayne Panton. Good morning, sir. Welcome, welcome. We'll give you a little applause. Woo! So good to have you back.
Good morning, Sandra, and good morning to all the wonderful people of our wonderful Cayman Islands. It's a pleasure to be back with you. It's a pleasure to be able to do anything after what I've been through over the last few weeks.
Can I just pause you for one quick
and
second?
By the way, the word is discombobulated.
Discombobulated. Did I say combobulated?
Not so much a good old Caymanian word in origin,
yes,
but it's a good old Caymanian word that's used.
I appreciate that because we be trying to do word of the week and we need to get it right. But just one quick note. This person says, Sandy, just a point of correction. They said Richard the son was actually charged for stabbing that same Filipino that she had beat up. The mother allegedly had him stab him, and he got off of that scot-free too. Oh my God, what on earth? Okay. What a hot mess. All right. I'm confused even more now. But anyway, Premier Panton, my apologies. You were saying that I was what was the word again?
Discombobulated.
Discombobulated. Yes. Okay.
That's the expression.
How are you feeling? I know we haven't seen you in a minute, and you had a little, you said you're so thankful to be here, but we know you had a little bit of an accident. Can we start off by asking how you're feeling and how you're doing?
You know, I'm getting there. I think every day that I think that I'm a lot closer to being great, I get reminded that I still have a little ways to go. So I'm doing okay though. I'm you know, there are a lot of people with a lot worse problems than I have. And, so I am just very thankful to be here. Very thankful for family and friends and the support that I've had. So that's really what's important, and particularly, you know, at this time of year. You know, that song, I don't know the name of it, but it goes like, you know, so this is Christmas, that time of the year and all that. That keeps going in my head, and that is something that I think we need to focus on that right now. I think with all the difficulties, all the issues, all the troubles that people have, there are times that we must focus on those, and there are times that we have to celebrate with family and friends and enjoy the season, the reason for the season too. And so let's talk about some good things like that. I guess you know, I know I wanted to just touch on some of the things that you know, we've managed to do in the community over the last week or so. Last weekend we had our Santa sleigh ride through the community, dropping off gifts for children and stuff, and it was really, really wonderful. And you know what's amazing, Sandra, is that it's not just the kids that really enjoy it. We had so many adults that basically came up and said, you know, this is wonderful because this reminds us of old time Cayman. And there was a lady who basically, she had a young child, and she handed a young child to a stranger and jumped in the back of the truck with Santa Claus and Mrs. Claus. And of course, I was driving the truck, and I still not really that mobile, and I didn't get out or anything, but I was looking at her in the mirror, and she was crying. There was tears running down her face. So I had to call somebody to find out what was wrong, what happened with her. I thought maybe she'd been injured or something, and those were tears of joy. This lady was telling everyone in the back and Santa Claus himself that from the time she was a little girl, she always wished to have an opportunity like that to interact with, in her mind, Santa Claus. And here she is as an adult and as a young mother and this is her first opportunity to do this. And I tell you, that really struck home for me. That, you know, no matter how old we are, there are things that bring joy to our lives, and you know, it is just a wonderful thing to be able to see humanity on display in that respect. So we really enjoyed that. We didn't get to see 100% of the kids that were waiting, and we ran out of daylight really, and it gets difficult when it gets dark. Aside from some of the mosquitoes, but it was really enjoyable. Really enjoyed it, and I'm happy to be able to get out. I was at home for 9 days, unable to do much, and I'm still a little bit, you know, restricted in terms of mobility, and I have pain and stuff. But I am really getting there, and I'm just grateful it wasn't anything worse than that. So good to be here with you, and you and your two elves that are tied onto your mic there.
Yes.
When you do the close up, you kind of hiding behind one of them.
I know. They, I'm needing the microphone kind of centered, but yes, they're my co-host for the last couple days here. Yeah. So we do have some comments. Let's read a few comments here. Thank you, Jonathan. Jonathan also said the correct word is discombobulated, not combobulated. Yeah. Thank you, Jonathan, for the correction. I most certainly appreciate it. Cayman Action Kind Committee says, good morning, Mr. Panton. Aliano says, yes, my Premier, welcome back. Luana says, Mr. Panton, good morning, sir. Alwick says, good morning, Mr. Panton. Miss Pat says, good morning to the Honorable Wayne Panton. Miss Beulah's here also saying, good morning, Mr. Panton. Rena says, good morning, Mr. Panton. Welcome back. Happy to see that you're on the mend. Wee says, love you. Big heart eye emoji, Mr. Panton. Hearts again. Lisa says, the police husband is a common denominator. Lisa, we're going to dig in some more in that when we return. Allison says, good morning to Mr. Panton. Good morning from Debbie as well. And Siobhan says, laughing out loud, she called him Premier. He's the only one for that title. He actually cares about the people. Iva says, good morning to you, Mr. Wayne. Glad you're feeling much better. Wee says that you're blessed. Shamika says, good morning to the Honorable Wayne Panton, and thank you for the Santa Parade. I loved it. Made me so happy, and my granddaughter loved her gift. Vicky, happy to hear that. Yes, Vicky says, oh, my sweet PM, Premier. Debbie says, wishing you a speedy recovery, Mr. Panton. Jonathan says, I second that sentiment. I think the one about you being the real Premier, but anyway. Alice says, good morning, Mr. Premier. And of course, Al Ray says, good morning, Wayne. Good to see you up and about. So many people missed you. There was somebody else who, I can't remember who said that earlier. Let's say that you're I had mistakenly, and it really was a mistake, a Freudian slip, whatever you want to call it. I accidentally said, oh yes, Premier Panton's going to be on the show today. And I was like, oh man. So a lot of people, Premier Panton, genuinely miss you. Here's another person says, bless, loving, good morning, Mr. Wayne Panton. Welcome back. We love you. There's just so many people who really missed you and missed, they were upset when this whole situation happened with you no longer being Premier. What can you say about, and I know you're such a reserved individual. Sometimes I kind of wish I had your temperament. And then other times I'm like, nah, we're going to let all hell loose. But you are a very, I must say, what's the word that I'm looking for? You have a very, you're very even-tempered. You seem to just, take your time with situations and making decisions. Some people have been critical of that, mind you. Yeah. But I have to wonder how much you can tell us about what transpired. I mean, there was all kind of stories that, oh, you were at the hospital with your driver, so unfortunately you missed the vote, and people stepped forward and asked the other person to be Premier. All sorts of stories are floating around. What are you willing to say to the people of the Cayman Islands now about what transpired and how you went from being Premier of this country to essentially, being on the back bench?
Yeah. Well, I don't want to belabor the whole thing, but I will just try to summarize it with the relevant bits, from my perspective. I think, obviously there was, and the opposition have basically consistently, at every opportunity, tried to bring motions of no confidence. And I think there have been issues with the government. There have been issues with certain behaviors, and I think that created a perception that there was a lot more weakness than there probably actually was. And so they consistently tried to exploit that. And then we got to the point where we had one individual leave the government, and he went out and he was making comments about me. I would tell you, I didn't listen to everything that individual said, but I would say more than 90% of what I heard was completely made up, completely inaccurate. Now, I'm the kind of person, I'm going to tell you if anybody criticizes me, I'll say, yeah, that's not an unfair comment. I mean, you've expressed your view of my personality at times, and yeah, I mean, I don't disagree with that. I'm not an explosive kind of person, and I have deliberately tried to not be that way, because I actually do have a very, very fiery temper, which I have had to learn over the years to try to control, because I don't think it's necessarily productive in all circumstances. And I don't like when I lose my temper. I really lose my temper, and I don't like it concerns me about the potential outcome. So in relation to what happened, we had that motion. The motion failed. There was 2/3 of the votes were required to remove me as premier. So that motion failed. We had the option of having the speaker at the time, Catherine Wilkes, to ask her to come and join the government. And that was basically in motion. But when, immediately after that, we were having discussions in a separate room in Parliament. And something happened which really knocked me for a loop, and that was my friend and personal driver basically fainted. He collapsed in Parliament, and that had a very profound. Well, seeing him and dealing with him and seeing what had happened to him had a very, very profound impact on me. And I was already exhausted, and I think I thought to myself, something has to change. And we have a situation going on where basically one person is holding up getting the budget done, and I have to do something to address this. So I spoke to one particular individual and said, look, I'm willing to step down provided you become premier, and I'll support you. And then that changed slightly as the hours went on, and I was at the hospital. Then I went home because I was so exhausted, and so it just went on from there. And and I'm an honorable person. I stick by my word, and although there was a change in approach, a slight change in approach, the individual that I was referring to basically ended up coming back to me and saying, well, would you still be okay if I was deputy rather than premier? And at that point, I was so exhausted and I was so impacted by everything that had happened. Not so much during the debate, because honestly, there was just nothing but nonsense being debated there. completely inaccurate stuff. For me to get up and object to everything that was being said, and to say that the country was being led, the Honorable House was being misled, I would have been like a jack in the box. So I think the reality is that, my view has always been this position is bigger than me. The needs of the country are bigger than me. And I need to do something in order to break this logjam and put the country in a position where it can move forward. It can have a government. It can have a budget. Because I was extremely concerned that more nonsense would go on, and we would get down into Parliament dealing with the budget in late December. We would end up, going through Christmas and all sorts of nonsense and coming right up against the wire. We have a statutory deadline. We've got to have a budget in place because the government's authority to spend money runs out December 31st. So we had to have a budget in place. And I took a position to me that was right for the country. Whether it was at the end of the day, it's a position that the people weren't happy with, or whether they go on to make mistakes and do things wrong, that's not within my purview. That's up to them. But I felt I needed to take a decision. And I was, as I said, I was very, very significantly impacted seeing somebody that I have grown to be very, very fond of, to have a lot of respect for, somebody who had been ill previously on a temporary basis, and to see them in that state really impacted me. And I thought, life is very short, and I can't continue to have people around me who are possibly absorbing my stress because of the situation, because of the persistent approach. I mean, did the government in over the last 2.5 years, did it get everything right? Did it do everything it wanted to? Did it do everything I wanted to? No. But we did a lot of things right, and we accomplished a lot of things. And then one thing is for certain is that there was never any embarrassment from the leadership perspective. There was never anything that reflected, some improper motive or improper actions or inappropriate behavior on my part. So that aside, we still needed to be able to move forward. So I gave them the option to be able to move forward and get things done.
Can I just pause you there for one quick second? I mean, the amount of support that you are getting this morning is overwhelming, to say the least. And, you often came on this program. We had our Premier Access. I was just saying this morning that I guess we're going to have to change the name of that to something else now. But, you would come on this program to reach as many people as possible. We've still got over 500 people strong on the live stream, and that doesn't include Instagram, which is our newest platform that we're live streaming the morning show on. But I must say that, again, you and I have very, very different personalities. And so sometimes when I listen to you, I have to extract what it is that you're actually saying and then break it down in typical cold, hard truth manner for my listeners. So let me just extract what you have just said. So essentially you said that you were willing, you're not mentioning any names, but by deduction, I'm going to mention some names here. So you said that someone who had left the government was out there basically saying slanderous things about you, because if 90% wasn't true, that's libelous, slanderous, whatever. I'm going to assume, and if I'm wrong, then you correct me, but if I'm not wrong, just remain silent. I'm going to assume that wasn't someone who just left the government. That would have been someone that you fired from his position as deputy premier.
No. I
You're
wasn't
not thinking
speaking
of him.
about him.
Oh,
I'll use the names. I mean,
yeah. Tell
Dwayne
us.
Seymour left the
Oh,
government.
him.
Um,
Okay.
what was it, about 2 months, a month and a half, 2 months
Yes.
prior,
Okay.
and then and he went on this, and it was very clear what he was trying to do. It was
Mm-hmm.
also very clear that he wasn't doing that on his own.
Right.
There had to be others who were involved in
Mm-hmm.
this initiative.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, we had Mr. Bush, who finally left the government and basically made statements along the lines of the country is going in the wrong direction, the government is going in the wrong direction, this type of thing.
Yeah.
I'm still trying to figure out, based on the direction that they have now taken, how it was that the government was going in the wrong direction. But that's beside the point. Just hopefully that clarifies the position. Yes, the previous finance minister and deputy premier, he had a few things to say,
Mm-hmm.
and
Okay.
the inaccuracies around what he was saying was that there were personal issues between us, and that he ended up resigning. Well, I think, based on what I had discussed previously, I think it should be clear that he did not resign.
Mm-hmm.
You can't resign by you can't resign by WhatsApp. There is a statutory process. There's a
Mm-hmm.
constitutional process by which you resign.
Mm-hmm.
And he was given the opportunity to resign in accordance with that constitutional process. He chose not to do it. And there is obviously also a constitutional process that can be followed to remove someone who does not actually resign of their own volition. And
Mm-hmm.
that process was followed.
Mm-hmm.
So a subsequent WhatsApp saying I've resigned is neither here nor there
Mm-hmm.
in the context of whether somebody formally resigned or not.
Okay. So I'm glad, you see, I'm so glad I asked that question, because I was thinking I'd forgotten, quite frankly, about John. So this was when he was going on his media circuit. I think he went over to Mario's show, whatever, and he was saying, I never listened to what he said, but he was saying all kind of things about you and your government. And so you're saying that's what you're referring to as being, 90% inaccurate.
Yeah, I mean, as I said, I didn't listen to most of it either. My concern was getting stuff done for the people of the country and trying to improve the lives of the people of the country. I really wasn't concerned about sitting and listening to everything he had to say. But I did hear a few pieces here and there. One of the main things, obviously, he also made the statement in Parliament. But it's interesting that somebody with my personality, which you've identified earlier, is described by him as somebody who is autocratic. An autocratic person, I think, almost by definition, would never allow the kind of nonsense that that went on with him and the statements that he was making. That an autocratic person would have immediately come back and slammed him publicly. But that's just not my style. And if he was obviously saying a lot of things that were not accurate. And yes, I mean, if there's a criticism of me, it is that I don't throw a rock at every dog that barks. And I just don't see the need to do that. I think the public and our people are very discerning, and they can figure out whether somebody has ill motives and whether somebody is saying something that is accurate or not. Yes, there are some who will believe everything they hear.
Yeah, here's what I remember.
By and large, I think most people weed out those types of through those types of statements through a lens of their own clear understanding and their reasonable perspectives.
Yes. Well, I'm going to challenge you on that and say that perhaps you're giving some people too much credit. This is what someone said. I want to screenshot this because sometimes I'm reading these WhatsApp comments and I know people are like, did somebody really say that? Or is that Sandy? So sometimes I throw them up on the screen. because this person has said you should have been throwing boulders, not just rocks. Hold on one second now. Let me see where I've saved this to. One quick second. But I mean, we have to clarify these things, Premier Panton, because unfortunately, I think that people do believe a lot of stuff that isn't necessarily true. So it is worth filtering out exactly what's going on here. So this person says Wayne is too decent for these animals. He should have went off on them. And then they meant to say a particular word, but it said duck them all. Now we stick with them. Now we are stuck with them. The outcome was expected from the night he formed the government. He aligned himself with too many immoral, broke persons who are willing to sell the country out for their own personal gain. He should have thrown boulders. And they said, no, the public is stupid. You need to answer the false statement. So maybe take this advice on board, Mr. Panton, for 2024, going into New Year and beyond. Good morning, caller. Welcome to the program.
Good morning. I just want to quickly say this also to my country. I want to thank Mr. Wayne Panton, who was our premier, all the hard work that he did. This is Lisa Prendergast.
Yes,
I want to thank you for all the hard work. I want to thank you for being a gentleman and not a bully. I want to thank him for standing strong for our people. Him and Heather. I want to thank Sabrina for the great work she's doing with the hospital. However, there is one hiccup. We have a chief medical officer who actually changed a bit of the laws regarding you getting medication. And I really believe that should have been extended. Those prescriptions should have been extended till the end of the year. And I think more advertising and telephone calls from HSA and also our providers or pharmacists to people getting their prescriptions to notice, because I mean, you're going to have a whole lot of people that can't even walk or depending on other people to come out and get a prescription. You got to get it in paper. You can't actually send that over a phone. If we can't respect our doctors that we've had here for years that have saved lives and acknowledge when they have their signature on file, send in a prescription by the phone, then who are we? We cannot make life much harder for our people in this country. The 36% of us that are still here. We have to do better. So I want to congratulate Sabrina, but she needs to look at that strongly, that prescriptions need to be able to be sent over the phone with the correct signature of that physician, wherever they are, whoever they are. Respect them for their craft. They have done many years to become a doctor. So we have to respect them. The CMO just and change things that you have to go and get an actual prescription in person and hand it in. No, that needs to be.
Yeah, we're gonna look into that because I think,
and quickly, I know you're ending up. And also quickly, I want to say thanks to Kenneth, also for all the hard work he did. Also Andre, everybody that did hard work. I want to say them and the civil servants. I want to say thank you and all the best for the holidays.
Thank you so much. All right, darling. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
We do have another caller in the line. Good morning, caller. Welcome to the program.
Morning.
Morning, dear.
What the chief medical officer is doing is unlawful. The Electronic Transactions Act does not allow a pharmacy to deny a prescription being submitted solely for the reason that it's an electronic transaction. That's against the law. They could say, well, I think, this doctor isn't registered or something else is legitimately wrong with it, but they can't say, well, if everything is well on the prescription, the doctor is registered, he has a license or whatever else. He can't just say, I'm not accepting it because it's electronic. That's unlawful.
Denny, I take on board, but the Premier has limited time with us this morning. I mean, oh Lord, the Premier. Former Premier Panton has limited time with us this morning, but I'm making a note of this because I do want to ask some inquiries about this and see exactly what's going on. And we'll circle back to this issue. Any questions or comments directly for the Premier this morning?
No, he's not the Premier.
I mean, oh gosh. Oh my Lord, for Mr. Panton, for Wayne this morning, the Honorable Wayne Panton, the GOAT.
Well, what he could do is he could look into this matter, because this affects a lot of vulnerable people who are dealing with difficult situations in their lives.
Mm-hmm.
And this, if he wants to, you know, make a significant impact right now on people's lives,
Mm-hmm.
look into this and agitate for the right thing to be done.
Okay.
That's what I would recommend.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. And sounds like you're feeling better. Thank you. All right. 93626.
Sandra, can I just very quickly address that?
Yes.
I understand that the issue that people are talking about, and the origin of that decision by the chief medical officer was related to a situation where there were people basically not breaching, but doing things, conducting operations in a way which raised serious concerns about the amount of certain types of medications that were either psychoactive or very powerful painkillers and this type of thing that were being prescribed and made available and apparently being sold, and basically the system was being abused. So this was a response to try to control that situation. But yes, it does have a huge impact on people in terms of convenience. Basically, the CMO's position was that if you require people to go back and see the doctor every month to get a fresh prescription, that will cut down on the opportunities for people to write long-term prescriptions that are not, and I don't even mean doctors. In some cases, it wasn't doctors doing it. It was others that were somehow had control of doctors' prescription pads and records and stuff. But it would help to cut down on the abusive scenario that was being reflected. But it is inconvenient and it does impact a lot of people, and that is a perfect example of the innocent suffering for the guilty. And these are things that we have to try to address. And I have actually discussed this with Minister Turner several times, and asked her if she could have a further discussion with him to see if there's another way to try to address it and minimize the impact on people, because it really legitimately is very, very inconvenient. There are people who have long-term conditions that it's very inconvenient for them to keep going back to the doctor every month. Doctors are upset about it as well, I understand, because their time, a lot of them have very, very busy practices and their times are limited. Anyway, it is something that is being reviewed, has been under discussion, and I hope that a more convenient alternate approach can be found, which addresses some of the concerns, but is less impactful on ordinary people and their needs.
Just to clarify, someone who's listening and who's in the medical profession said that this is only in relation to narcotics. It's not every prescription and it's not every drug.
It is not.
It is a limited amount of drugs. I don't know what percentage.
It's not just narcotics, but it's also more powerful sort of, I don't know how you describe it medically, but I would call it psychoactive medicines as well. But it is it's the type of medication that everybody understands are the types of things that get abused. So the types of very powerful medication or painkillers that people have historically gotten hooked on and abused and all that.
Things that are
those are things that we've had way too much in the way of prescriptions. I mean, you can look at the numbers of prescriptions that have been going out based against the population, and there are, in other countries, there are records that allow you to sort of come up with rules of thumb for the levels of prescriptions versus the population, segments of the population. And I think what our information was reflecting was that there was a lot more stuff being prescribed here or being made available here than that would you would see typically in other countries.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where a lot of the concern came from. And then there were situations where specific instances of abuse were identified. So it comes from a position of caring. It comes from a position of wanting to try to control and stop abuse that was going on. It wasn't that the chief medical officer just made something up because he felt, it's just a good idea off the cuff. No, he was trying to abuse a genuine, real concern.
He was trying to address, not abuse.
Sorry. Yeah, he was trying to address.
Yes.
Pardon me. Thank you for sometimes words come out and you don't even recognize or realize that we've said something different.
Yeah.
It was like the time that I was trying to point out to my uncle when I was fishing with him that that there was a pelican in the water next to the boat, and I kept saying to him, "You see that penguin there?" And I said to him about 5 times, "Can't you see that penguin?" And he kept saying to me, "Penguin? I don't see any penguin." And then about the 5th or 6th time, I said, "Can you see that pelican?"
Yeah.
It was only then that it clicked in my head that I was calling a pelican a penguin. So I said to him, then I said, "Look, you could have stopped all this by saying, 'I don't see a penguin, I see a pelican.'"
We have another caller.
Anyway, aside.
Yes.
Yeah.
Caller.
So that's where that comes from.
Okay. And for somebody said it also includes steroids. And that is, I guess there's a wider group of people who are being prescribed steroids. Caller, your question or comment this morning. Good morning.
Good morning, Sandra. Good morning, Mr. Panton.
Morning,
Good morning, sir.
Yes, sir. Mr. Panton, with the perspective after your experience thus far in this administration and in this electoral cycle, and the reality, Mr. Panton, that our electorate here in the Cayman Islands, of which I am one single member, and the reality that we in Cayman, Mr. Panton, have a situation because of our subjugation to the British system of Westminster parliamentary democracy. We, the electorate, do not have the ability, which I believe we deserve, to be the ones who choose our leadership at the highest of levels. Speaking directly, Mr. Panton, to the fact that our electoral process, our system of decision-making processes is not representing us here in the Cayman Islands. We now have another situation, another scenario where somebody who nobody asked for that individual to be at the helm of Cayman Islands governmental administration, finding herself in there by hook and crook. I would like to know your personal opinion, sir. Do you see the need for Cayman, and are you willing to stand for, if you do see the need, for Cayman to look forward, to evolve, and make the necessary changes for us, the electorate, to be the ones who choose who our premier is to be or not to be, to the explicit exclusion of anyone and everyone else, including specifically the members of parliament, sir? Because you've been in the mix of this, you've seen it, you dealt with it, you tried to come up with an amalgamation. You brought on people, Mr. Panton, who I know, you know the quality of character and the lack thereof of those individuals who I do not even need to name. And we see the mess that Cayman is in now as a result, sir. So I'm going to ask you, in a retrospective perspective, Mr. Panton, are you willing to help Cayman move forward, to evolve, so that our democracy can begin to evolve to a better place where we need to be so we can actually, the electorate, feel like we are actually being represented. Because I can tell you right now, sir, and I only speak for myself, but I believe that a lot of people feel the same way.
Mhm.
We are not being represented.
All right. Thank you so much, caller.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
So I guess the question really is one of where we go from here. What do you see as your role now that you're no longer premier, you're no longer even a minister? What can the people expect from you?
Well, I mean, as I've said in my statement previously, well, I think I issued two statements. One was following the change, following me stepping down as premier, and the other one was in relation to me declining the offer of becoming speaker. I think I've been very clear that my interest is in representing the people of my constituency, and in representing the people of the country in general from a national perspective. So I will continue to advocate that position. We have an election in April of 2025, and we'll see where things go from there. No system, in relation to the comments of the previous caller, no system is going to be perfect. We do not have a system which allows us at present to vote for the leadership of the country, to vote for premier, and the Westminster model is one which has been adopted by many Commonwealth countries. A lot of them were former colonies of the UK, and a lot of our OT territory colleagues, sister OTs, all have similar models. It's a model that works, and it can work. Can there be within that model some tweaks? Yes, but you can't go that far without too far without fundamentally changing it as well. And it's difficult to completely change it to some other model and become like a republic or something, without being an independent country. And at the end of the day, it is going to be, as long as we remain an overseas territory, it is going to be subject to UK approval, because it will require constitutional change. I am not, certainly at this point, an advocate for independence, and I would therefore prefer to maintain a system which is similar to the overseas, the rest of our colleague territories. I think it can work. I think the issue that we have had is whenever, and it happens, it can happen in any system. There is no perfect system. The issue that we've had is that we have had people who have, both from within and from outside of government, tried to influence things that happen all the time, try to influence policy improperly, influence it through financial leverage or financial encouragement. And that is what happened over the past couple of months. I'm not saying it happened with everybody. I'm saying it happened with certain people. And there is no doubt about that. I have been concerned for some time, and I've had conversations with the UK representatives that there's too much outside influence that seems to be reflected across elements of the civil service, and clearly it happens within the political arm as well. And I think even the current premier made some reference to, it was somewhat veiled because it wasn't clear what exactly the reference was to, but it was something about a government operating by remote control. It certainly didn't happen under my government. It didn't happen for me. I think one thing was clear was that nobody could influence me with money or favor or anything else. I was always going to take a position that I thought was the best interest of the country, the best interest of the people. And if it had an impact, whether they were family or friends, if it had an adverse impact on them, provided that it was I thought it was the right decision, that was just how things were going to have to play out. But that's not to say it doesn't happen otherwise. And there's too much of it that goes on, you know. And to me, there's too much of an influence at times, even within elements of government. So we have, within our constitution, we have commissions that are designed to support democracy, promote democracy, support and promote accountability. And I oftentimes feel that they are not working well, that they're not doing they're not delivering what they need to deliver. They need to be a part of the guardrails that help to minimize outside influence, that help to ensure that the right decisions are being made, and that special interest impacts or influences are limited as far as possible. Because whenever you have that, you have a situation where the interests of a few are being supported, oftentimes against the interests of the many. And I don't believe in that at all. I believe that we need to make decisions without fear or favor that impact positively as many people in the country as possible. And we're not going to not everybody's circumstances are the same. We're not going to be able to, there are not too many situations where everything you do is going to be the same impact on everybody's interest. But you need to minimize situations where special interests are being favored.
All right, we have a caller and another one trying to get on. So let's go ahead and take this caller first. Good morning, caller. Question or comment for Mr. Panton this morning?
I believe a combination of both.
Okay, thank you.
I mean, it is well known fact that Cayman itself thrives on our tourism sector, but it's also well known that it is one of the most abused and neglected sectors they are. With the minimum wage movement recently, one of the big highlights was the way in which the minimum wage affected tourism workers. My question then becomes, because we've now seen that momentum come to somewhat of a halt, and it's almost seemed like we've been placed on the back burner again. Why is it, or how is it, or what can you recommend as a former premier, so that we as the tourism workers respectfully get back our respect, because this country, quote unquote, rides on our back.
Okay. Thank you so much for that comment, question, caller. All right. So question relation to tourism.
Well, I think specifically in relation to the minimum wage, and there is obviously a minimum wage report which has been provided. I am not sure if that report has been tabled. If it has not, it should be. And the government needs to be considering whether and to what extent action should be taken in order to reflect either the full recommendations made or some decision which is based on those recommendations. A lot of good work was done by that committee, and it involved a lot of data assessment. It involved the head of the ESO, the Economics and Statistics Office, and So it is not something that is just opinion based. It is a legitimate empirical assessment that should support a good decision. And I think that, you know, the employment ministry and employment minister ought to seriously consider the actions that need to be taken. I saw a report suggesting that the minister hinted that nothing much might be done about it or something along those lines. I think that is probably a mistake. I mean, it's clearly not every report that a government receives may have full support, but I think something that reflects currently a minimum wage a national minimum wage for the country being set at $6 an hour for the past probably 7 years now. And I think it's $4.50 plus another $1.50 for in terms of gratuities for as it relates to the tourism sector. I think that needs to change. I don't think you can have a country with a national minimum wage set at $6 an hour, particularly when we have had the type of inflationary impacts that we've had over the last 18 months, or going on to 2 years now. Now, inflation has been tempered significantly. It is the rate of increase is coming down, but we have had in the meantime significant increases in costs. And if you put that against a picture where the national minimum wage is still sitting at $6 an hour, clearly that is an untenable situation, and I don't think we can have that situation continue for any significant period of time, because it's a farce. I mean, effectively, everybody understands you can't live on just over $1,000 a month even if you're working full time. So we've got to address that, and every other country has been doing it. And I know our situation is, we have certain unique aspects of society and business in Cayman, and
Yes.
One of the issues is that you know, our own people, they will have, I think there's probably a much higher proportion in Cayman compared to any other country around the region of families that have live-in helpers and domestic helpers and this type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, it will cause a situation where they may end up being required to pay them more than what they have been paying them.
Mm-hmm.
But if across the board there is support to raise wages for everybody, then I don't think that is necessarily that's necessarily a bad thing, and there may be ways to mitigate some of those impacts as well in phases. So I don't think that the government should just put down the report and say we're not going to do anything about it because it has impacts on some of our own people. I think the positive impacts across the board, yes, there is a risk that it does contribute to inflation in and of itself. But I think that can be mitigated by making sure that you don't adopt a rate that is above what is typically being paid and viewed as fair compensation. I mean, I think a lot of, even government for years, government has been paying people a minimum of about $10 an hour.
Right.
So,
all right, we've got a caller on the line. Good morning, caller. Welcome to the program.
Good morning, Sandy, and good morning, Honorable Panton.
Good morning, sir.
Well, first of all, it's good to see you go back straight away to engaging the public, even before you're fully recovered, and I hope that you continue recovering well. I just have one point to make. If I understood you well, there seems to be some concern in Cayman about the extent to which the private sector is influencing government. Was that like the point that you made earlier?
Yeah, I mean, I'm talking about
Well,
it happens all over the world, right?
yeah,
We have
okay.
elements of private sector that have an outsized influence. It's fine to lobby. It is fine to lobby, and that happens all over the world. But
Yes.
in some cases, you have a lot more of that, or more than just lobbying going on.
Yeah, well, in fact, you've just made my point, but let me just conclude it. Just the only one point. You see, having worked in legislation for Cayman government and other governments, what you have said, of course, is correct. It's all right to lobby. It is healthy to lobby. And even when we used to write legislation for you, we would always want to hear from the stakeholders, the people who will be to whom that legislation will apply. You want to hear from them. But the problem, of course, is that in Cayman, what I have found is that the private sector controls the government too much. As a drafter, there were times I went to a private law firm to work in a committee where we are writing legislation. Even the optics of that are not good, but we were forced to do that. Let me just cite one example of how, in my personal life, I found that the private sector controls the legislation too much. I developed a little course on the legislative process to help people understand how to work with the drafters and how to control the content of legislation, for which you have to be trained. You just can't do that. Drafters are trained, but people who give instructions, they also have to be trained. I developed a little course, and then I also thought it was necessary to understand some of the principles that government applies, or rather the courts apply in judicial review. Because again, you go to Bermuda, they train their civil servants. They say, don't do X. If you do X, there will be a successful judicial review. So that helps both the government and the people outside there, so that their rights are not being infringed. I tried to teach those things. I was prevented from teaching them in government. I was going to do it for free. Then a Caymanian asked me if I could teach them privately. They refused to give me permission, and they even went to court and paid a lawyer $80,000 to prevent me from doing that. And that is because the private sector is preventing even those who wanted to help, like me, to do it for free. They spent $80,000 government money to prevent me from doing that. That is wrong. I think that you should not run. They should not run a government where they are trying to keep people ignorant. I was just trying to help. That should stop. I thank you.
Thank you so much. Very, very interesting. All right, folks. We're coming up on the end of our program here. The time just goes by so quickly. And I know the Premier, when he used to come on earlier, he was always happy to give us, additional overtime. I think he's already done that this morning because he was supposed to leave at 10. So my apologies for that. Aliano says it's, again, piss poor labor laws. I did have another question that came in for you. Let me just see if I can find it. I can't remember where it was now. So a couple of people are asking whether or not you intend to run in 2025. Have you made any decisions about your future politically?
No, I haven't. I mean, I think, if I'm being honest, I'll tell you that it's kind of difficult to have concerns about things and to just walk away, and feel like you are abandoning those concerns. You're abandoning your desire to have a positive impact on the lives, the quality of life, and the interests of your country that you love so dearly. So it's difficult to contemplate that, but it's something that I have to, discuss with my family and stuff before I make any decision about what to do. But I can tell you that I'm extremely concerned. I felt so uncomfortable and in so much pain, and I was taking so much painkillers that I didn't bother to watch any of the stuff that was going on in Parliament. But obviously, since Parliament, there have been there's been more press coverage, and I've seen some of that. And as I've felt better, I've looked at certain things, and I'm really concerned about some of the things that are being said, and some of the directions that I think are being reflected. The government, the budget that I was trying to put together I think reflected a sustainable budget that was conservative, that tried to achieve what we needed to achieve, try to deliver and help the people without creating additional debt and additional burdens on the country. And I think where we've ended up is we've had a mix. We've had quite a bit of what was in the budget originally, but we've then had a lot more spending in certain other areas, including in relation to capital. We've had an additional $150 million that is proposed to be borrowed in order to fund some of this. My position was there should be no additional borrowing. My position was we needed to try to restore as quickly as possible the country's financial reserves, because there was good work done when I was a minister between 13 and 17, and Minister Archer and I used to sit right together. Our offices were adjoining, and we had long discussions at times about how to try to ensure we restored not just democracy, but restored financial stability in the country. And the government at the time, which was obviously led by Sir Alden McLaughlin as Premier, we made difficult decisions to try to do both, to restore democracy, to restore good governance, to restore fiscal stability. And some of that was continued in the second term led by Sir Alden. And so the country, as a result of that, was in good shape financially, and that allowed us to endure the impacts of COVID, the pandemic. It allowed us to help people, and we need to be able to get back to restoring some of those things rather than continuing to borrow money to spend on projects that may or may not be priorities. It's all well and good to say, well, I want to do this project at the beginning of the year and outline this is what I want to do, and it looks like, okay, this is not unreasonable to consider at this point. But then when you get 6 months down the road and you say, okay, we've got to figure out what the budget should be for the next 2 years, can we have a submission based on what we've agreed as our priorities? Can we have a submission on the basis of those priorities across the various ministries? Tell us how you want to do these. Tell us what money you need in order to do this. When you get a submission which is hundreds of millions more than what you think the country can realistically afford, and when you have a particular ministry that says, I want to do this project, but I also want $50 million more in operating expenditures, the answer has to be, you can't have both. You've got to rationalize how you approach this.
Can I just ask you a clarifying question? Because you said that there was one thing that was holding up your budget before you were basically removed from being Premier. Can we ask what that one thing was?
Well, it was, I don't think it's any secret at this point that there was concern within the government around the proposed new school in Cayman Brac, because the initial cost of that was at one estimate, and then subsequent to that, within months, I think 3 or 4 months, there was a subsequent indication of a reassessed cost, which had gone up quite significantly.
What was, do you recall the initial cost versus the 50 million plus?
Well, I'm just going to round up. Let's say it was, it went from 30 million to close to 50 million. So, there were concerns around that. And it's all well and good to say, yes, this is a proposal that was discussed and supported in principle by government. But when you when you look at the realities down the road of what you have to do in terms of a budget and what's requested for, even with the same ministry, for increases in operating costs, you have to make decisions which reflect certain realities. You cannot just say, yes, we're going to have a substantial increase in operating costs or operating expenditure for education, as well as have a significant capital project being done that some people felt, wasn't necessarily a current priority. Now, I was trying to be in a position where I could support that. I wanted to be in a position where it was not something that we were committing to the country in terms of the budget immediately. You have to ensure that you have some fiscal space available to do some of these projects. That you can do it. You can do it if it turns out that it makes sense, and it turns out that you can do it while maintaining fiscal strength. But if you commit to doing something immediately, you've got to ensure that it complies with the various FFR provisions and stuff. And it makes it very difficult then, because you either have to know that you have certain levels of increased revenue coming in from your existing sources of revenue. In other words, those numbers are growing, or you have to find additional revenue, new revenue. Those are where the challenges were. And if you have an insistence that this has to happen, I don't want to get too far into the details of it.
I think we get.
The difficulty was not 5 ministries. The difficulty was really just one ministry and one particular desire. And that was what was holding things up. We were in a position to move forward, and there were suggestions that I'm not going to support the budget and this type of thing. Well, that would just have to be what it was, as far as I was concerned. I was prepared to move forward with the budget, but of course, all these various initiatives and actions were being taken to help distract and to help create problems. That also then resulted in the opposition thinking this is an opportune time to bring a no confidence motion. And in fact, as I said during my submissions, during the discussion on a debate on the motion, this is not the time to be doing this. We have a budget to get in place because the authority of the country to spend money expires on December 31st. And we have 4,500 civil servants who need to get paid. And we have tens of thousands of Caymanians who are going to benefit from the things that we are doing to help them and help their lives. So it was not the time to be talking about having early elections. It was not the time to be talking about having a no confidence motion. But that's what was being pursued.
All right, we've got a caller. Caller, good morning. Welcome to the program.
Good morning, Miss Sandy.
Morning, dear.
I don't have anything political to say to Mr. Panton, but I do believe that you have to give praises and flowers to people, and your show gives ordinary people an opportunity to say that to their politicians that they wouldn't normally see. So I sent you a WhatsApp message, but I know you're getting a lot, so mine might be lost, and I really wanted Mr. Panton to hear. My message said, that man is a real OG, real goat. I admire him. when he talks about being in control of his emotions,
Mhm.
it just makes me love him and admire him even more.
Mhm.
If only other politicians would take a small page or even half a page
Mhm.
out of his book and personality. He genuinely cares for all
Mhm.
all people that are on his island.
Mhm.
This man is not normal. He is too good. I don't know him personally, but what the public sees is exemplary. I love you, my adopted, original, and favorite premier. I just
Wow.
wanted him to know that.
Thank you.
I just wanted him to, I'm a young person on this island, not Caymanian, but I watch and I see everything that's going on. And this man, they're going to
Wow.
regret their decision because this man was the real thing.
Wow.
Mr. Panton, you are loved, you are prayed for. I wish you a speedy recovery and just all the best.
You gave me goosebumps. Oh my gosh. Thank you so much,
I
caller.
mean it. I
And
mean
that,
it from the
listen,
bottom of the soul.
let me say it was it was so much more heartfelt and meaningful with you having read it than what I would have done. So thank you so much for taking the time to call.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Darren. I truly appreciate that.
Merry Christmas.
Thank you. Merry Christmas.
Thank you.
Wow. Oh my gosh, that's amazing. Jackie says, agree, caller, 100%. And thank you for saying that. That was just so touching. I hope you know how much people really do appreciate what you have done for this country and really do know that your heart is pure and that you were trying to do the right thing. I mean, she wrapped it up for so many people. Can I ask one final question? And then this person says, please read my comment. This one says, it's great to see the people's premiere. Oh my God, you guys. One person did send in this question and they're wanting your feedback on this. So I'm going to ask you two more questions and then I know we got to run. Everybody's trying to wrap up everything for Christmas. But this person says, question for Mr. Panton. Does he believe that there was political interference with the CIDB/Raymond Scott land deal referenced in a recent article on Cayman Mall Road? So we talked about this yesterday. I don't know how well versed you are with the situation. I'd heard this is something that supposedly came to cabinet. And basically, you know, this land was in foreclosure. They had a buyer for the property. CIDB had a signed contract. And through the Solicitor General's office, they have been instructed, I guess via the Premier's office, that this will now be subject to compulsory acquisition because the government all of a sudden, quite conveniently, has some expansion projects that need this property for.
But I don't, obviously I'm very aware of the facts around that situation. You know, I've had many conversations, both with the current Premier and other members of the BRAC community, and some people here in Grand Cayman as well on that particular issue, and I try to find ways to address it. The problem was that it was brought to us at a time when there was already a contract in place.
Right.
And when there's a binding contract, when there's a contract in place, it's binding. And, you know, there is, as you know, you did law, Sandy, when you have a contract in place, many times it's just a question of damages, right? How much loss have you suffered if I tell you I'm not going to go ahead and honor this contract?
Yes.
And the court's job then is to figure out what that individual what damages have they suffered by the other side withdrawing from the contract, and how do we compensate them? But under the land law, effectively, there is a concept of specific performance where it's not just a question of damages. You can, if you have a contract that is in writing in relation to the purchase and sale of a piece of land, the purchaser can take the seller under that contract to court and get the court to order specific performance, and that means you have to complete the contract. So it is very difficult. We did try to explore whether or not the purchaser under that contract might have agreed to sort of back out of it, and then to see how else we could. Basically, I was trying to create a situation where others who were interested in helping would have the time to be able to put together a proposal to pay off CIDB, Canadian Development Bank, and that wasn't happening. There was apparently the purchaser said, no, we're not interested in waiving our interest and dropping this.
Wow.
We think we have a binding contract. So I don't know what you're talking about in terms of government acquiring that land. I don't know the facts around that, but it does to me raise some questions, I guess. I think people don't understand that, and when I say people, I'm talking about people, even people who are in power and in position to exercise certain authorities and certain powers that are given. If you are given a power to do something, not only do you have the ability to do that, to exercise that power, but you also have a corresponding responsibility to exercise that power properly. And the power is given to you to be exercised properly and in appropriate circumstances. Is not just a power to exercise in any circumstances that you feel like exercising it.
God! My apologies. that required a kaboom. Thank you.
I thought that was thunder. So I don't know. I don't know the facts around that. But we had an issue that came up in the past about the use of compulsory acquisition in relation to private property, which wasn't for the purposes of roads and that type of thing, which is how we typically utilize compulsory acquisition today. And you have to have a specific definable or demonstrable public interest, and not just a narrow public interest. It needs to be a wide public interest. So I don't know. I know nothing about the discussion around that, and it's hard to express an opinion other than just to generally say that, just having the power doesn't mean that you can exercise it properly. It has to, in the context and in the circumstances, it has to be exercised properly. And I certainly sympathize with anybody in any circumstances where their homes are subject to foreclosure. I mean, I have assisted many people in those kinds of circumstances, with advice and otherwise, and it is very difficult. But I think in that particular case, it's been a very, very long time since any payments have been made.
Yes,
if at all. So it was difficult. It was easy to have sympathy for the family.
Yes,
but it was difficult in the circumstances to say that this wasn't a warranted action or course of action by Canada's Development Bank. And I will tell you that this is one of the reasons why I think that Canada's Development Bank should not have a residential mortgage portfolio. I think the credit union and the commercial banks, and in some cases other private lenders, leave them to be involved with that. Government should, those are private sector entities that provide, particularly credit union. I mean, they provide excellent terms to help people. And I don't believe that a development bank ought to have a residential mortgage portfolio where we know that we've had too many instances over the years. This is why CIDB's balance sheet has been forever impaired, because political decisions were made in relation to this. in the past, and it's too often and too common for the opportunity and the temptation to do it arises. It's just not something CIDB should be doing. Anyway, that's beside the point in relation to this. I don't know enough about this to express an opinion other than to say generally, that the power has to be exercised properly, and there is, I think, if you exercise the power in circumstances like this, or if you were to just decide that you were going to compulsorily acquire a piece of land to help a narrow sector of the public, I think a lot of people in the private sector owners of land would probably be quite concerned about it.
Gabby says the transparency is what the people want. That's why everybody loves Mr. Panton. I'm glad he's not the premier anymore, because he can come and give the people the tea. Hot mess. One final call, I promise. Good morning, caller.
Good morning again.
Yeah,
Mr.
quick.
Panton.
You gotta make this one quick, honey child.
I will try, but I mean, we have these compounded situations, and we're talking specifically about the actions of those like Mr. McKeever Bush and the history of what I see as an abuse of power and influence in order for his own political expediency and interests. I mean, we need to have some kind of evolution here to be able to step away, Mr. Panton, because this constant abuse. I mean, we are talking about, putting Cayman into a debt for a school in the Bracknell. There might be a need for it, but it's not being done properly. It's not being done wisely. It's not being done judiciously. And it seems to me that this is part and parcel, if I read between the lines, of your very diplomatic approach to everything, which is highly valuable, and I commend you for it. But this is obviously, to me, a result, what has happened to you being kicked out, because you weren't willing to play along with what is disgusting behavior at the hands of your colleagues who, sir, I really wish, Mr. Panton, that from the get-go, those people didn't deserve your company. I really wish, Mr. Panton, that you had stood alone from the beginning, because that group of people, far too many of in there, within PAC, they have brought you down, Mr. Panton. They brought you down. I think you, in retrospect, would have been done much better for us as a country if you had stood alone from then, sir. Because what is happening now, sir, is bad, and it is putting us on an even worse trajectory. Mr. Panton,
thank you, caller.
Look, man, I have a lot of respect for you. I hope you heal well. Merry Christmas to you and your whole family.
Merry Christmas.
Thank you. Appreciate that very much.
Continue to stand, Mr. Panton. Please continue to stand.
Thank you so much. Merry Christmas, sir.
Bye now.
All right. I keep promising that's it. Two more quick questions. The first one is, you were saying something earlier and you didn't get to finish it, about kind of how you got where you are. And that was in relation to Mr. Bush. And I've seen a number of questions. Some people are saying, how is it possible that he's back as a parliamentary secretary? So what role did Mr. Bush play in the demise of the PAC administration?
Well, I mean, it's the PAC. It's the same people. Effectively, the name was just changed. So, what role did he play? Well, he went from basically, 1 week saying, Premier, I think you are the man for this role. I believe in what you're doing. I've got grandchildren, and they are, I'm very concerned about the future for them, and I want to see a sustainable future for them. I want to make sure that we have a balance between a prosperous economy and a strong society, and a fair and balanced approach in relation to the environment, because we need everything to work together. To 2-3 weeks or two or 3 weeks later, saying, "Oh, you're the wrong man, and the country's going in the wrong direction." So he left the government then, and that took us to a 9-9 situation. I know he has difficulties. He has he's in the midst of a upcoming trial, preparations for a trial.
Several. He's been charged with several different matters, but
yes. Yeah. But there's one trial was supposed to happen this month. I think it's been delayed
to January.
And he has a lot of challenges, a lot of difficulties. It seemed to me, based on what he was saying to me, that he had some financial needs as well, which it was always going to be difficult for me from a government perspective to help in that respect. So I think he was encouraged in some way to do what he did, because he certainly didn't. He historically hadn't been saying to me, "You're the wrong man." I mean, he would call me quite often in the past when he was at home and he was somewhat inebriated, feeling a bit good, and that's fine. That's the place to do it if you want to do it.
Yes.
And he would profusely plead with me not to go to the PPM, and I said, "I don't know where you're getting this from. Who has told you that I'm going to the PPM?" Anyway, my point is that somehow he was encouraged to change his view very quickly. Not speculating. I'm just saying somehow he's encouraged.
I'm going to speculate with some hand gestures this morning. Let me ask you.
We ended up in that situation, and it is an untenable situation.
Yes.
But there was a way forward, and the opposition were certainly aware there was a way forward, but they were determined to. I think they were used themselves. They thought they were being presented with an opportunity to achieve one thing, and they've achieved quite another.
Can we be clear on something here? You said financial difficulties. Were you ever asked for any money for Mr. Bush because of his financial difficulties? No,
not directly. But I knew he was having some difficulties, and he was. I think there were a couple of times where he was asking whether there was a way for him to be paid more as an MP, and I think the reality was, looking at it, that there really wasn't any way to do that. Not in any way that was appropriate or fair,
or legal, really.
Well,
I mean, because had you not just fired him from being Speaker of the House? Because
well, I didn't fire him. When we ultimately agreed to move forward with him as a part of the government, I said to him at the time, "Look, this is your opportunity to redeem yourself, and you can go through 4 years if there are no issues. Wouldn't it be fantastic for you to be able to retire on this basis? Imagine how what a change it would be for your family,
to not have a scandal for a change."
Well, whatever. But I mean, I have always been. He has said to me that he was one of the things he respected with me was that I was always very concerned about the impact of what he was going through on his family. I don't think that they signed up, and it's a difficult thing with politics. Your family never signs up for some of the difficulties you go through. My family certainly haven't signed up for what I've endured over the last couple of months in particular. And so, you know, I think the bottom line is that, you know, I have an issue with him being now appointed as a parliamentary secretary. I think that is putting him back on the edge of the executive, the periphery of the executive of the country, where you know, he's had some difficulties in the past, and I don't think that you know, it was appropriate to do that. I asked him to step down as speaker shortly after the last set of incidents for which he is now you know, facing a trial. And you know, he didn't do it willingly initially, but he eventually got around to. He eventually listened to dissents on it, and he agreed to step down. So my belief is, you've got to hold people accountable for the things that they do, and I know that there are potential consequences for taking certain actions, you know, and clearly there have been consequences to me. But I believe that the decision that I take at the time, if it's the right decision for the right reasons, if it turns out to impact me negatively down the road, well, I can still live with that decision because it was the right decision at the time. It was the right decision for the country. So no, I didn't fire him, but I did ask him to step down, and he did eventually step down. I think it was the right thing for him to do. I think that what he did in relation to the government wasn't the right thing, but that's something that he is going to have to deal with. And, you know, I think it's quite obvious who was behind what they were trying to achieve, by who immediately flipped back on the other side. So we'll just leave it at that, and that's fine. That's government. That is that's politics. I am quite happy where I'm at this point. I am, you know, I feel that. I mean, yes, I've had some unfortunate accident in the recent past. I don't wish broken ribs on anybody, I can tell you that. But I still want the best for this country, and it is difficult to just ignore that desire. Let's put it that way.
All right. Oh, earlier this week, your name was mentioned in relations to some Tahoes. Let's just clarify this, and then we're breaking until 2024. But
in relation to
some Tahoe vehicles, Chevy.
Oh,
Are they
tacos?
not tacos. Sorry. Some Chevy Tahoes. The Minister for Finance and Ports, and I saw Mr. Curtis said, mention the Tahoe deal, because he essentially said, it was kind of interesting how he said it, but he said, oh, by the way, these were purchased 8 months ago. We've had them for 8 months, or they were purchased 8 months ago, or something like that, under the previous premier. The implication I got from that, although he didn't say it directly, is that somehow you authorized these purchases and you were on board with ministers getting these vehicles. Can you clarify that for us, please?
Well, if he said that some of these purchases were done while I was premier, then that is factually correct. If he said I authorized it, then that is not correct.
Right.
My position has been that if we needed, and I do think it was necessary to have additional protocol vehicles. My position was, if we needed additional protocol vehicles, then it should be done through the Cabinet Office, and they should be utilized in the normal way. I think there were some views being expressed that, and it sort of grew over time as well, that you know, in other territories and other places in the Caribbean, ministers are given their own cars and given their own drivers and this type of thing. You know, and my position was, we should not just be spending money because we have it on these types of things. Now, I recognize that it put me in a difficult situation, because I'm being told I have to be driven. I have to have a driver. And there was already the Range Rover that Sir Alden had acquired a few years ago. And there was also a specific vehicle for the deputy premier. So, you know, it was a difficult situation to be able to say, no, I don't think ministers should have vehicles and drivers. I think in many instances, they may be required and it would be useful, but I don't think in all cases. I mean, I went through my first term as a minister driving myself. And in fact, I remember very well that Sir Alden, as premier then, he drove his own car as well. And on this occasion, you know, in 21, when I became premier, I argued that I wanted to be able to drive myself and I wanted to drive my own vehicle. And certain people, certain friends used a lot of leverage on me, basically saying, well, you know, certain people are going to lose their jobs if you take that position. So I ended up giving up on that. And there were some, you know, there were some cogent arguments around it. Like, you know, for example, what happens if you get in an accident? Either you get hurt, or it could be the other way around. You end up making a mistake and somebody else gets hurt. How does it look on the leadership of the country and all these types of things? So I gave into those arguments. But where I did make a decision that suited my perspective and my values was, I bought my own car. I bought an electric car, Audi e-tron, and that became my vehicle that I drove and that my driver drove for me, unless there was some specific official event where the flag had to be flown. And in that case, you know, yes, I would agree to go in the formal premier's vehicle with the flag and all this type of stuff. But my personal car didn't have a flag. It didn't have any markings. It was just driven by my driver. So no, I did not authorize. I knew I was in a difficult situation with that, but I didn't authorize, and I didn't approve the new Tahoes, or whatever they're called, being bought. And I also, my position in relation to drivers was, if people need a driver, then they should be sourced through protocol, rather than each ministry having its own vehicle and having a driver. Because I felt that it wasn't a question of disrespect for the ministers. I was just concerned about public perception. And it's the same thing that's happening now. If you got a fleet of vehicles that ministers are driving around in, and particularly if they have their own drivers and stuff, people in the country, particularly at a time when, you know, the country's enduring significant cost of living increases, people are going to feel a way about it. You know, they're going to feel that it's probably going too far. So those were just the types of concerns that I had, and the kind of approach that I had.
So how did you become aware of the purchase of the vehicles? If you didn't approve it, how did you know?
I saw them showing up in the parking lot. No, I think you have to understand that each ministry is allocated a budget. And when that budget is approved, effectively, the chief officer has the authority to spend it. At the, you know, with the, in some cases, direction or support of the minister. And that's what I think That's how it was done.
Mm.
And it's not something that requires the approval of the Premier necessarily. I mean, there are many expenditures that the Premier doesn't sign off on, anything, doesn't approve anything specifically. It has to be some sort of significant project that requires its own capital allocation before the Premier is necessarily aware of it, and is a part of the discussion to say yes or no.
All right, let's end there. Thank you so much. This is the last show of the year, folks. I've made an executive decision with my two co-hosts here to take next week off, because we're off Monday and Tuesday anyways, official holidays. I said, you know what? I got a mountain of paperwork here that I need to get done and things that I must prioritize. So I'm going to take the entire week off next week. So I want to wish everyone, including Premier Panton, all of our listeners, thousands of you tune in to the show. Thank you guys so much for making 2023 an amazing, I thank you from the bottom of my heart, making 2023 an absolutely amazing year. 2024 is going to be even better here at CMR. We always believe in leveling up, always adding something new and something exciting. So there will be things coming down the pipeline, whether it's new equipment, AI. Remember I told y'all I'm going to get on the ball. So we're going to be doing a lot here on, my apologies, on the platform. Premier former Premier, just Wayne, has agreed to continue his dialogue with the people of the Cayman Islands as a representative. He's still representative for the District of Newlands, obviously, and he will continue to come on the program. We will sort out all the details of exactly how often he will come on and what he'll continue to do, because I see that you guys really enjoy having access to him, asking him questions and getting him to explain stuff. Somebody says, yes, call him Premier. Oh, Lord have mercy. Y'all gonna get me in trouble. It's the end of the year. They say he's still the Premier in my book. So listen, Kurt Christian said Wayne will always be remembered as the best Premier to date. And I thank all of you, all of our daily listeners, all of our occasional listeners, everyone, Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. I hope that you have the most joyous Christmas. In typical Caymanian tradition, please remember this reason for the season. Spend some time with your family and your loved ones and use it as an opportunity to reflect. Premier Panton, somebody showed me your Christmas message. I haven't had a chance to read it yet, but I'll post it up for you, because they said this was like the most amazing message that they had read. So some comments for our listeners today.
Thank you very much, Sandra. And I was supposed to leave, as you noted earlier. I was supposed to attend a road opening, so I will.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
I'll need to apologize to my friend, and I need to apologize to my friend and colleague, MP Heather, or Parliamentary Secretary Heather Bodden. The road that is being opened has been described previously as the Airport Connector Road.
Yes.
That goes all the way through land that was originally developed by her father.
Yes.
And it was being opened and named the J. Bodden Highway, which I want to say that we are all so proud of, because let me tell you, growing up in Newlands, her father and his brother, Mr. Hubert, they both put so much into the community, and they were, and not just in Newlands, but nationally as well. Heather has her love for community and her desire to see the place nice and clean. That's not something that she just happened to develop. She was indoctrinated. That was ingrained in her by her dad as well, Mr. J, who was very, very community minded, somebody who was, worthy of being emulated. And it is so fitting, I think, and I appreciate so much that the government did actually go ahead and name that road the J. Bodden Highway. I think that is so appropriate. And I want to say congratulations to the family, and to say that we share in their joy, we share in their appreciation for the recognition of what their father contributed to the country. We're so proud of what he did. And we're so proud that so many of them, the entire family, has continued to reflect that kind of ethos. I want to join with you in wishing everyone an absolutely fantastic Christmas. I want everyone to be safe. Remember the reason for the season. I want you to enjoy your families, hold them close, share quality time with them. It's less about presence, presents, and more about presence, presence. Spend the time with your family, love them, hold them dear and close. Tell them how much you appreciate them, and tell them what they mean to you, because tomorrow isn't promised to any one of us. And that leads me to another thing, and that is every year. Well, the holidays are hard for a lot of people. They're missing loved ones that they have lost, and it becomes difficult. I know my family is the same way. I lost my son at the end of October in 2010, and I lost my father on December 26, 2014. So the October to the end of the year and into the beginning of the year is always a difficult time for me and my family. But it's a difficult time for so many people because others have lost as well, and others feel that pain. And it is a difficult time for many people. Christmas is a high pressure time, a high emotion time, and I want people to just enjoy it and try to relax. But I want all of us to be mindful of those around us that need our support as well. So let's be there for our neighbors. Let's be there for our brothers and sisters. Let's show them the love and care that we have as a community. And let's try to be careful on the roads, because it's another thing that really hurts me is, waking up and hearing about somebody who's lost their lives on the road when, it should be a joyous time of the year for everybody. Let's not drink and drive. Let's drive carefully. Let's be courteous. Let's, show kindness on the roads. In Cayman, if you speed around, you might get to some place a minute before somebody else does. But in doing that, you might endanger your lives and the lives of other people. So please, let's be responsible. Let's all try to get into 2024 together. Let's show the love. Let's share the love. Let's all be safe. Thank you very much, Sandra. I'm happy to have the opportunity to be back on the show with you. As you said, I intend to continue being available to people as regularly as I can. And I will try to do it on other media as well. I have to talk to OC to find out whether and when he'll let me on Radio Cayman as well. But your show is one that I think reaches a lot of people, and the format is very convenient, and you do a fantastic job. I've always said to you, the work that you did, particularly during COVID and stuff, has always been a real highlight for me of the value of your show and the way you approach things. Yes, there are times when people will criticize you, and yes, there are times when I think you let the best of your emotions get you. But none of us are perfect, and I think the value of your show is vastly greater than any sort of negatives or any issues that come up from time to time. So thank you all very much. God bless our wonderful Cayman Islands and all of the people who live here and all of our fellow Caymanians. Love you all, and let's try to continue to be the wonderful country that we are, and let's get through the holidays safely and love each other and care for each other.
Thank you so much, Wayne. I almost said Premier Panton again. All right. Thank you so much, Wayne. We really appreciate that. I want to read one final comment, folks. before we go ahead and break for the day. I thought this one was quite interesting, and I think Wayne might chuckle at this. Part of what this person says, they said, Mr. Panton, I'm so sorry to hear of your injuries. I'm glad that you're feeling better. You look so much better as the stress of those cutthroats is behind you. You look fresh and so cool. Take care of yourself. And if you don't take care of you, who else will? Merry Christmas to you and your family. And, you know, they went on to make some other comments about the Minister of Labor and Border Control not paying his pension and insurance. So maybe, you know, they need to get that under control. Folks, again, thank you for 2023. I think we're so blessed. We have another week, a couple more days till Christmas. Christmas is Monday, and then another week till the end of the year. I'm trying to take time off, but you know me, I can't promise that I might not squeeze in a little live stream here and there, but I really do want to spend some good quality time with my family as well. And I do have a lot of work, other things that I must get done. But what do I see for 2024? I think it's going to be an amazing year. I'm always optimistic, always try to be positive about where we're going and what we're doing. I think just the opportunity to have this dialogue and this, you know, just relationship that you and I and all of us have developed, I think is truly amazing. I've got some brownies to bake. So Leroy, I'm coming for you with some brownies there. But he was like, wait a minute, why is Leroy getting brownies? Don't worry. I will be making brownies, and at some point everybody's going to get a brownie. So thank you all so much, but I've got to make some mac and cheese for another function today as well. But yes, I just want to extend, you know, my gratitude